By the time the truck doors rolled up, the sun had already cooked the yard into a flat pane of light. The detainees inside blinked at it like they had stepped out of a theater, not a compression pod. I knocked the side of the chassis with my baton. "Welcome to Camp Anabasis," I called. "Watch your step. If you fall, we have forms for that, and I hate forms." A few of them managed weak laughs. That was good. Jokes were cheaper than sedatives and did not need a requisition code. They climbed down one by one, clutching their issued bags. The bags were all the same thin grey material, stenciled with the United Earth Authority emblem, and they always looked too light. These people had been pulled out of worlds that were collapsing, cities folding, seas boiling, whatever the Shepherd array had locked onto at the last moment. You would think they would bring more than a bag that sagged like it held laundry. "Line up." I pointed to the painted stripe on the concrete. "Single file. You're safe, you're off the line, and intake will sort the rest." I did not believe half of that, but the script helped. I had learned it my first week. 3 sentences, calm tone, eye contact. The trainers in the city prison had called it containment language. I still thought of it that way. Different facility, same job. Keep them moving, keep them calm. A boy near the back of the truck missed the step and dropped. His palms slapped the concrete. He flinched like it had bitten him. I put a hand under his arm and lifted him back up. Light, wiry, 16 maybe. Hard to tell when the pod meds still clung to their faces, though a ghost of familiarity tugged at me. "You with me?" I told him. "Feet under you, all right?" He gave a quick nod, eyes darting to the yard. The perimeter wall threw a long rectangle across the ground, topped with sensor spines and the faint outline of the washtowers behind. Beyond that, the high plain ran flat and colorless straight to the horizon. No trees, no city towers, no one to run to. "Where's—" The boy stopped himself. They almost always did. They got it the moment they saw the wall and the watch points and the 2 lines of razor coil running in a neat double ring. Wherever they had come from, that place was over. Whatever or whoever they wanted to ask for was not on this side of the wall. "Intake first," I told him. "Questions go better when you've got food and a bed." Behind me, Gaz clanged the truck ramp back up and sealed it. He walked over, rolling his shoulders, half his uniform unfastened at the throat. Gaz always looked like someone had just woken him from a nap, even when he had been up for 18 hours. "You are getting soft," he told me under his breath. "Lift the next one. You'll hurt your back." "You planning to carry them all yourself?" I kept my voice low. He snorted. "They did not drag me out of a burning coastline. They can walk." Up on the watch point, one of the towers rotated, following the line of detainees like a slow eye. The guns on the cradle moved with it. People always noticed those first. The camp had medical, education booths, a chapel tent. Nobody looked at those until day 3. "Eyes front," I called. "Follow the line. The sooner we get you through intake, the sooner you stop looking at my face." That earned a louder ripple this time. Good. A guard who could make you laugh even badly read as less likely to shoot you. That was worth cultivating. The group shuffled toward the intake building, a low rectangle of composite and glass sunk into the yard. Over the door, the words "Anabasis Temporal Displacement Facility" were written in big clean letters. Someone had once told me Anabasis meant a march inland, away from the sea, away from danger. No one ever mentioned that in the orientation videos. We moved them through the outer door, into the short choke of corridor. Security glass on one side, metal on the other. Cameras at each corner. The corridor was narrow enough that if someone tried to rush, they could not get past me without climbing. Inside the observation booth, an officer in pale blue glanced up at us. She tapped something on her console, then raised a hand. "Batch Lima 7 is here," I told her. "All ambulatory, no pod failures. 1 sprained pride." The boy gave a quick, embarrassed grin and stared at his shoes. The officer's eyes flicked from the group to a screen just off my angle. Her lips parted, then flattened again. Hold them there, she said. My fingers tightened on the baton without meaning to. What for? Routing issue. Her gaze slid past me to Gaz. Keep them in the corridor. Routing issues happened. The camp had 3 main accommodation blocks, a medical wing, an isolation unit for high-risk cases, and 3,000 rules about who went where. Sometimes someone's paperwork got doubled, or a shepherd array mistimed a pull and dropped a person with half their body in a wall. That was medical, not my department. We kept moving. We did not clog the arteries. Do I look like a tour guide? Gaz muttered. We block a corridor. Intake backs up. Then they yell. Behind him, the door to the inner intake chamber slid open. A nurse stepped through with a portable scanner hanging from his neck. We had worked together long enough that we did not need names. Let us start health checks in the corridor, he suggested. Keep the line moving. Hold, the officer cut in from behind the glass. Command priority. The corridor quieted. Even the new arrivals felt it. You did not have to know the jargon to recognize when the people with guns and consoles started using short sentences. My hand terminal buzzed against my chest. I flipped it up. Priority alert. M-class arrival. Escort. Moreno. E. The little symbol next to it showed a silhouette profile marked in red. I had never seen that icon before. Classifications were for security risk, not faces. Problem? Gaz asked. I held the display where he could see. He frowned. Congratulations, he said. You got yourself a pet. I have no idea what that means. He shrugged broad shoulders. You wanted something different from the prison. Here it is. The officer buzzed the inner door. Moreno, she called through the intercom. You are requested in intake 3, now. Who takes the batch? I will route another guard. Her expression went neutral. Lima 7 can wait. Behind me, the boy who had fallen shifted his weight. His eyes were on me, wide and uncertain. It's all right, I told him. You're inside. That is the hard part. Just listen to the staff. Do what they tell you, all right? Another nod. He looked like he wanted to ask me not to leave. I did what I always did in those moments. Focused on my job. I passed Gaz the baton, even though he had his own, and stepped through the inner door. Inside, the intake building felt cooler and quieter. Banks of monitors lined one wall, showing the yard, the accommodation blocks, the perimeter. The other side had 3 scanning rooms and 2 interview booths for psych and identification. The whole place smelled of cleaning solvent and weak coffee, one of those bland, institutional notes that never went away. I had gone days without noticing it. Today it felt sharp and chemical in my throat. Intake 3, I called. The duty nurse pointed down the hall without glancing up from a tablet. His shoulders were hunched tight. A second nurse stood beside him with a pack half-zipped, like they had been interrupted mid-task. Both of them looked like they were trying not to look at anything. Problem? I asked. The first nurse wiped his palms on his scrubs. Just go, George. He never used my first name. Not on shift. I walked. Intake 3 was at the end of the line, past the psych booth. Its door was open, a hand's width. The yellow indicator above showed active monitoring. I touched the panel. The door slid, and I stepped inside, and there he was, sitting on the bench, hands cuffed to the ring set in the tabletop. My first thought was that someone had dragged an old mirror out of storage and bent it. The man on the bench had my face stretched across another 20 years. The same flat nose and mouth, the same heavier brow, the same crescent scar along the jaw from a prison riot door. His hair had gone mostly grey, cut short. One side of his head was bare skin, puckered and shiny where hair would not grow. He looked up when the door locked behind me, and the expression that crossed his face was something like relief and grief slammed together. Well, he said, voice rough. They picked you again. I stood there like an idiot for half a breath. Then training kicked in. I checked the cuff anchor, checked the feed camera in the corner, scanned his wrists for injuries. His left hand trembled, just a little. A rhythm he probably did not even notice. Name, I managed. He smiled. It looked wrong on my mouth. George Miguel Moreno. His gaze scanned my uniform. Same as yours. The room tilted just a fraction. I kept my feet planted. My record flashed by in my head. Full name, date of birth, the way it had looked on transfer orders and disciplinary reports. You from my branch? He asked. Or one of the side roads? I do not have side roads. It came out harsher than I meant. You are from a failed timeline. You know that, right? You were pulled by a shepherd unit. This is Camp Anabasis. You are safe here. He huffed a laugh. They still make you say that? Where are you from? I pushed on. City, region, last stable location before displacement. He leaned back against the wall, cuffs clinking. You remember the Cordova riot? Down South Block, the day shift that went sideways, Boy and Holding got crushed against the outer door when the crowd surged? He did not wait for an answer. They had you covering the inner corridor, he went on, almost gentle. You had one of those foam batons and 3 officers for 60 men and boys trying to get away from tear gas. You could not get to him in time. He was about this tall. He lifted his cuffed hand, measured an invisible line. And you could not get him out. Sweat prickled down my spine. I could hear the old sounds again. The metal clatter, the roar of bodies slamming doors, the weight against my shield. And then I pushed it back where it lived now, under routine and job scripts and the wall. That is in my sealed incident report, I told him. Who briefed you? No one briefs me, he answered. I was there. I was you. Temporal bleed, I muttered. Identity overlay. Psych will explain it. Trauma throws up false... Oh, shut up, he cut in. The words hit me harder than they should. Maybe because I knew exactly how my voice sounded when I had had enough. You think I do not know how it feels when they roll out the jargon? He asked. Bleed, overlay, contamination. Makes it sound like a dirty file you can scrub, not a person who remembers the way his own skin burned. I stared at the shiny side of his head. The burn scar was thick, running down along his neck under the collar. The uniform they had given him was standard detainee grey, but someone had ripped out the tag by the neckline. Habit. I remember doing that with prison greens the first week, fingers digging at the branded cloth. The intercom activated behind me. Moreno, you good in there? I thumbed the answer button. Stable, proceeding with identification. My own voice came tinny through the panel. It felt like another loop. The older me watched my hand. You are still right-handed, he noted. Interesting. Age? I asked. The intake form lay on the table, untouched. I had to force my pen to move. 59, more or less. Hard to count after a while. Place of origin. He gave the same city I had grown up in, the same neighborhood, even the street. He described the corner store that had closed when I was 12. He mentioned the security mural I had drawn on the wall as a kid, the one my mother had scrubbed off with a bucket and a brush. Every line I wrote made the air heavier. I need you to understand something, he said. No, I answered too sharp. What you need is to sit tight and let Psych evaluate you. You are in a secure facility. No one is going to hurt you here. You are not under criminal detention. You are displaced by an event you could not control. His eyes dropped to my hands. You still wear the cheap watch, he said. You kept the same brand, even after promotion. They tell you that in training. Keep something from home so you remember who you are. The watch is mine, I snapped. Stop talking like you know me. He lifted his gaze back up. There was nothing soft there now, just tiredness layered over something iron. I watched this place burn, he told me. I watched it more than once. I watched kids like that boy in the corridor claw at closed gates while you tried to follow orders and fire hoses at the same time. I watched guards lock the wrong doors because the protocol tree told them to. I watched you carry that boy's face on every detainee under 20 for 20 years. My throat went dry. This camp burns, he said. Every time they pick you, this camp burns. And you help them light it. I took a breath that did not feel like it hit bottom. You are traumatized, I managed. You have been through an extreme event. You are projecting. This facility has never had a fire incident. You can check the record. You think records matter to them? He jerked his chin toward the camera in the corner. They reset this place like a sim. Change a guard, change a schedule, see if the numbers come out different. You are not the first I have met here. You are just the one who still believes the script. He leaned forward as far as the cuffs allowed, voice dropping. Do not take the order, he told me. When they tell you to move us, when they dress it up nice and call it resolution or transfer or whatever word they are using this loop, do not follow it. Something rattled in the air vent. The hair lifted along my arms. There is no resolution, he went on. Just fire, every time. And every time you think you do not have a choice because some colonel with a folder tells you billions of lives depend on you closing a door. The panel by the door lit up yellow. The intercom voice turned crisp. Moreno, step away from the detainee. I realized my weight had shifted forward, that I was closer to him than I should be. I took 2 steps back, hands open. Intake officer, the intercom continued. Wrap the interview. Command wants a contamination assessment. Understood, I answered. The older me laughed quietly. Contamination, he repeated. That is one word for it. I clicked the cuff chain back into the anchor, even though it was already secure. My hand shook against the metal. This interview is concluded, I told him. You will be assigned temporary accommodation and support services as soon as Psych clears you. You still think you are a prison guard with a nicer title, he said. You think you can watch the yard and keep your hands clean because someone else writes the orders. You think if you keep your head down, nobody will make you pick who burns. I pulled my hand back. You are upsetting other detainees, I answered, falling straight into regulation. You will be placed under observation for your own safety. He smiled again, slower this time. I am trying to save yours. The door slid open behind me. 2 security officers stepped in, one to either side of the frame. Their weapons were holstered, but their hands rested on the grips. We will take it from here, one of them told me. I stepped aside before I did something stupid like argue. The older me watched me go. Next time he talks about billions, he called after me. Ask how many times he has watched them die already. The door shut. His voice cut off mid-word. In the corridor, the duty nurse waited with a tablet and wide eyes. Moreno, he asked quietly. What was that? Kron refugee. I rubbed the heel of my palm against my face. From my city, claims to know me, classic identity overlay. The nurse's gaze flicked to the room window. The officers inside were uncuffing the older me, moving him with professional hands. We have had overlay before, the nurse murmured. They usually do not know your middle name. I did not answer. The panel above the door pinged. A new alert flashed across my hand terminal. Command debrief. Moreno, E. Report to room 4. I took the long way to room 4, past the observation banks. The monitors showed the yard, the truck I had unloaded now empty and rolling back toward the gate, the thin line of detainees still waiting in the corridor with gas. The boy from the fall had his back against the wall, hands jammed in his pockets, eyes on the floor. The camera view of intake 3 showed only the empty room now. Bench, table, cuff ring, no older me. They had moved him fast. Room 4 was small, the kind of space planners always included for private conversation, and then used for everything else. A table, 3 chairs, a wall unit with a built-in console, a carafe of water nobody trusted. Colonel Blackwood waited in the far chair. He still wore his field jacket despite the heat, collar zipped to his throat, hair clipped short enough that his scalp showed through. His posture had the kind of rigid stillness that either meant lifelong discipline or a bad back. I had never seen him stretch. Next to him sat Dr. Suri Shelley, the camp psychologist, in her usual plain shirt and dark trousers. Her hair was pulled back in a loose knot, a pen pushed through it like a pin. Sit, George, Blackwood told me. I dropped into the chair opposite them. He studied my face, eyes moving from my jawline to my brow, then down to my watch. "How are you feeling?" Dr. Shelley asked. "Like I just met my father," I replied. "If my father had my face and knew the worst day of my career." Her mouth twitched. "That is one way to put it." Blackwood tapped a thick folder on the table. "You have been briefed on temporal displacement," he said. "In general terms," I answered. "People pulled out of collapsing branches, rescue operations, non-combatants only. They drilled that part in hard." "And you have read the contamination protocols?" "Yes, sir." He watched me over steepled fingers. "Then you understand why we classify what just happened as a contamination event," he went on. "Not in a moral sense, in an operational sense. Information flow in the wrong direction causes instability." "He knew the Cordova riot," I cut in. "He knew details from a sealed report." "He is you," Blackwood replied. "Of course he knows." Silence dropped between us. "You are not surprised," I observed. Dr. Shelley's pen paused over her tablet. "We have had M-class arrivals before," she said. "Not while you were assigned. We do not advertise it." "M-class," I repeated. "Moreno class," Blackwood clarified. "Individuals with your biometric profile displaced from alternate branches. You are a nexus point, George. You show up in high-impact scenarios. You are consistent." I almost laughed. "Consistent how? Screwing up evacuation orders, losing boys under doors." Dr. Shelley winced. Blackwood's gaze did not shift. "In most branches where you appear, your actions in crisis correlate with survival rates above average," he replied, "which is why we placed you here when we did." "You placed me here," I repeated, "because I am good at not getting people killed." "Because you make hard choices under pressure," he corrected. The older man's words rang in my ears. "You help them light it." "What does that mean exactly?" I asked. Dr. Shelley slid her tablet toward me. A stylized graphic glowed on the screen. A sphere, faintly shaded, with offshoot lines branching from its surface. At the end of several lines sat small dots highlighted in red. "Those are timeline branches where we pulled M-class individuals," she explained. "You, or versions of you. In many of them, you were present at Camp Anabasis or facilities like it during failure events." "Failure events," I repeated. "Containment breaches, large-scale casualties, loss of infrastructure," she elaborated. "Fire is a frequent factor." "You mean you watched this place burn?" I said. "More than once." "Yes," Blackwood answered, "and you still sent me here." "That is exactly why we did," he returned. "We learn from each iteration. We adjust variables, staff composition, guard placement, procedural emphasis. We look for the configuration that produces stability." "You are running experiments on whether I blow up," I said. "On whether you keep this place standing," he replied. The room felt smaller. "What about the people you pulled?" I asked. "Do they get to be more than variables?" Dr. Shelley rubbed the bridge of her nose. "They are alive," she reminded me. "In their home branches they would not be. That may not feel like much to them right now, but it matters." "Tell that to the old man with my face," I muttered. "He does not seem thrilled about his rescue." "That is precisely why we are debriefing you now," Blackwood cut in. "We need you to compartmentalize. Treat Moreno-class detainees as you would any other displaced person. Perform your duties. Document interactions. Do not let their claims color your judgment." "He told me this camp burns," I said. "In his memory it already has, in more than one loop." Blackwood's jaw tightened a fraction. "If we react to every refugee's account as a prophecy," he said, "we paralyze ourselves. They come from thousands of failed futures. We cannot carry them all." "I am not asking you to carry them," I answered. "I am asking why you did not tell me you had other versions of me on file before I walked in and saw my own face." "Because foreknowledge corrupts outcomes," he replied. "We need to see what you do when you are not trying to be better than the last you." "That is twisted," I told him. Dr. Shelley exhaled slowly. "You have a right to be angry," she said. You also have a job, and a whole yard full of people who need you to keep walking them through intake instead of tearing strips off command. Her voice was calm, but there was a raw edge under it. She had seen her share of burn events too, I guessed. Maybe not here. Somewhere. We will monitor this M-Class closely, Blackwood went on. You are to log any interaction immediately. Any claims about future events go into a separate channel. You will not discuss his warnings with other staff or detainees. That is not a suggestion. What happens to him? I asked. Medical evaluation, psych assessment, standard integration if he stabilizes, Dr. Shelley answered. He is a person, George, not just a variable. For now, I murmured. Blackwood's eyes narrowed. Do you understand your orders? He asked. There it was. Orders. My spine straightened out of habit. Yes, I managed. Repeat them, he instructed. I treat Moreno-class detainees as I would any displaced person, I recited. I document all contact. I do not let their claims influence my duty. I do not discuss this briefing. He watched me as if he could see the places where the words scraped my throat. Good, he said finally. You are dismissed. Go finish your intake. I pushed back from the table. My legs felt solid enough. The room swayed only once when I hit the door. In the corridor, Dr. Shelley caught up with me. You all right? She asked. No, I answered. But I remember how to walk, so that is something. Her mouth twitched again, almost a smile. George, she said quietly, you know they are not wrong about one thing. I can't wait to hear which. You are good at this job, she told me. Better than most, you care. That makes you dangerous to command and necessary to the people behind the wire. Try to remember both those things when you decide how to be angry. I thought my role here was simple, I muttered. Walk them in. Keep them safe. File my reports. Roles are never simple for Nexus cases, she replied. But the walking in and keeping safe still matters, even if the rest is a mess. She squeezed my shoulder once, quick and firm, then turned back toward her office. I went the other way. By the time I got back to the intake corridor, Gaz had the Lima 7 batch halfway through medical scans. The boy from the fall stood with his shirt off, a nurse pressing a scanner to his chest. His eyes found me. You vanish, I get all the work, Gaz grumbled. Command romance you again? They do not know what they are missing, I told him. He studied my face. You look like you saw a ghost, he observed. Something like that, I answered. He jerked his chin toward the scanner rooms. You want to take over? I got tower patrol in 10 and they will chew my ear if I'm late. I have it, I said. He handed me the clipboard with a theatrical sigh and sauntered off, already loosening his collar again. I stepped into the scanner room. The nurse backed away to make space. The boy hugged his arms across his ribs, skin goose-pimpled under the bright ceiling strips. You disappeared, he muttered. They said you had to go. I am here now, I told him. Deep breath. He watched the scanner pass over his chest. Is this place really safe? He asked. Yes, I answered automatically. I forced myself to hold his gaze. We have walls, I added. Food lines, doctors. You are not on a collapsing street or in a flood. That is a start. He nodded once, slow. The scanner chirped a duplication warning, but the nurse muttered about system echoes, hit override and made a note. Next, I called. We moved them through. Names, basic vitals, a quick glance for obvious injuries or stress. Some stared at the walls like they were waiting for them to melt. Some stared straight ahead, faces blank. I fell back into the rhythm. Ask, answer, sign, move. The older man's words scraped around the edges of every question. When the last of Lima 7 cleared the scanners, the mess hall alarm chimed the change of period. Detainees flowed down the corridors in loose lines, supervised by guards with batons at their hips and boredom in their eyes. I peeled off toward the holding wing. Moreno-class detainees did not go straight to general accommodation. They had a separate row, closer to the command block. No one had told me that rule. I just found the designation on the panel when I checked the roster. M01. That was how they had labeled him. M for Moreno. One for first of the current batch, I guessed. His door had a tiny camera bubble above the frame. New. The paint around it was a slightly different shade, like maintenance had slapped it up in a hurry. I keyed my access code. The little light went green. Inside the cell was standard short-term. Bed slab, sink, toilet, small shelf, big blank wall, no window. The camp designers had learned from the city prisons. Solid walls reduced thrown objects. The older me sat on the bed with his back against the wall, one knee up, ankle resting on it. The burn scars along his head and neck stood out in the flat light. Up close I could see the ridged texture, like melted plastic that had cooled mid-drip. "Back already," he observed. "They read you the script?" "They told me to treat you like any other displaced person," I replied. "Log interactions. Keep my head straight, not let you contaminate me." "Contaminate," he repeated, rolling the word around. "That never gets old." I stepped in, let the door seal behind me. "You are M01, I told him. "Is that what they called you in your loop?" "In the second one," he answered. "First time around, they did not bother with letters. I was just guard with compromised status." "You remember that," I said, "but you do not remember your exact age." He shrugged. "Time gets weird when you burn to death more than once." The way he said it made something cold settle in my chest. "You expect me to believe that?" I answered. "Multiple burns, multiple runs? You walk in here with my face and a horror story and I am supposed to ignore the psych manual and trust you. I expect you to remember how many times they told you did everything you could after Cordova," he countered, "and how that sentence never made anything better." I opened my mouth, closed it again. He watched me. "You know what they told me the first time I was here?" he asked. "Same thing they are telling you now. You are a nexus. You are important. You are here because you save people." He dug his fingers into his knee. "They do not tell you what they mean by save, though," he went on. "Not until the fire has already started." "There has never been a fire incident here," I replied. "Blackwood swore it. Records are clean." "Of course they are. They were smart enough to build the facility on a timeline they can overwrite. Every time this camp burns, they pull the plug on this branch and try again a few levels up. You only remember the runs where they decide to keep you." My head buzzed, like I had stood up too fast. "If you are trying to keep me from trusting command," I told him, "you are not helping your own case. They control your food and your bed and the lock on your door. Making me think they are monsters is a good way to get yourself labeled high risk." "I do not need you to think they are monsters," he replied quietly. "I need you to think they are wrong." The door panel flashed, an alert from the outer station. "Moreno," a guard's voice came through the intercom. "Curfew sweep in 10. You good in there?" "I am fine," I answered. The light went back to steady green. "This loop," the older me said, "you still trust Blackwood? You think he is honorable, doing his best, trapped in a bad system?" "He is not a cartoon," I replied. "I have seen him pull trans kids out of fights and take the heat for it. I have seen him push back on transfer orders that smelled off. He cares." "He cared in my runs too," the older me answered. "That is why it hurts." I rubbed the back of my neck. "If this is another one of your loops," I asked, "why bother? Why warn me? If things always go the same way, why care which version burns?" His gaze sharpened. "Because you are still asking that." The last three did not. Silence stretched between us. He shifted, swinging his leg down, feet flat on the floor. His hands rested on his thighs, palms open. "I am not here to tell you some grand secret that fixes everything. If there was a magic phrase, I would have used it already. I am here to give you something smaller and uglier." "What is that?" "The point where it started to change for me. Not the big order. The little one before it. The first time I lied in a report." I blinked. "You think I have never lied in a report?" "Not here," he replied. "Not yet. You are still clean. You still believe in the system enough to be honest with it. That is why they trust you. That is why they picked you. That is why they will burn you if you let them." "In my experience," I answered, Lying in reports gets people hurt. In my experience, he said, not lying in the right report gets a whole camp killed. When that moment comes, and it will, you will know, because it will feel like choking on your own badge. You will have a choice about who you are lying for. That is when this loop actually starts. He leaned back, the bed creaking under him. Until then, he added, go walk your rounds, make your bad jokes, help the kid who falls off the truck. Just remember, the script they gave you is not the only one you can follow. The panel flashed yellow again. 2 pulses this time. Someone outside was getting impatient. I pushed to my feet. You are under observation, I told him. If you agitate other detainees, you go to isolation. He smiled without teeth. There it is, he murmured. You do a good officer voice. I used to like mine. I hit the door control. The seal broke with a sigh. If you remember any practical details about these fires you say you watched, I told him. Time, location, triggers, anything that does not sound like a ghost story, log them. Command might ignore you. I will read it. He tilted his head. That is the first step toward lying in the right place. The door slid between us. In the corridor, the guard at the station raised his brows. He giving you trouble? The guard asked. Just talk, I answered. He will be fine. I walked away before anyone could ask what we had talked about. Outside, the yard lights buzzed on. The sun slipped behind the far edge of the plain, leaving the camp in sharp blocks of shadow and glare. Detainees lined up for evening count. Guards paced the fence line with boredom. From up on the tower, Gaz's silhouette moved, weapon cradled, gaze on the perimeter. He looked small from here. We all did. 2 days after I met the man with my face, the mess hall tried to tear itself in half. Lunch at Anabasis was usually noise and metal and tired people. Trays sliding, boots on concrete, the low roll of conversations in a dozen accents. Guards posted along the walls where they could see everyone and get to anyone in 3 strides. I liked taking a shift in the hall. It let me pretend we were just a badly run campus cafeteria with guns. Moreno, you on line duty or charm offensive? Gaz nudged me with his elbow as we stepped through the serving door, both of us with stun batons holstered, vests half-fastened. I did my charm quota this week, I told him. Cordoned off 3 arguments with nothing but my eyebrows. Tragic, he drawled. They should give you a ribbon. Detainees filed past the serving hatches, trays held out. Stew, bread, fruit slices when we had them. The food was heavy and bland on purpose, easy to digest, hard to fight over. A few kids stayed close to older relatives or to people they had met on the transport. A few sat alone like they were afraid to break line of sight with the exit. At the nearest table, a woman in a camp-issue jumpsuit leaned her elbows on the metal and watched the room like she was measuring it. Early 30s, hair clipped short, eyes sharp. She had the posture of someone used to speaking for groups and getting shouted at for it. She raised a hand when she saw me. "Officer Moreno," she called. "We need to talk about the queue system. Again." "That sounds like a later problem," I answered. "Is anyone bleeding?" "Not yet," she replied. "But you keep running Block C after Block A, while B gets last call, and you will have fights." That was Amita Das, unofficial spokesperson for Block B. The camp had never named her that. The detainees just started going to her whenever they wanted something worded, so staff could not pretend not to hear. "I will mention it in the briefing," I told her. "You mentioned it yesterday." "They like repetition." Her mouth twisted. "You know what repetition looks like from our side?" I did not answer, not out loud. From their side, repetition looked like long lines, denied requests, and guards who said, "I will mention it," like it was a spell. A few tables down, the boy from Lima 7 sat with 2 other teens. He held his spoon in the tight grip of someone not sure when the next meal would come, shoulders hunched, eyes darting. When he saw me glance his way, he pushed his tray an inch. like to prove he was eating like he had been told. I gave him a small nod. His shoulders loosened a hair. The mess hall was a rectangle with high ceilings, metal rafters, and 3 rows of support columns. Steel window slits ran along both long walls, too narrow for anyone to squeeze through, wide enough to let in a pale strip of sky. The walls were the color of dried mud, sturdy, boring. Halfway down the room, a column had a patch of darker paint where someone had covered old scorch marks. The repair was flush, neat. Only if you knew what fire damage looked like would you notice the difference. Old George had run his fingers over that patch during his intake walk, almost tender. I made a rule not to stare at it. "Visitors today?" Amita asked. "Anyone from the outside with actual authority, or just more of you?" "You wound me," I told her. "I have tremendous authority. I can make you get up and move 2 tables over, and then we both have to fill out paperwork about it." She snorted and took a spoonful of stew. The room buzzed along like that for a while. Detainees lining up, guards strolling the aisles, staff in pale blue moving between doors. I settled into my usual watch pattern. Doors, exits, clusters of raised voices, anyone who stood too fast. For a moment, everything lined up in that weird, almost peace that happens when a closed system remembers it's not currently on fire. Then the ceiling over the central aisle changed. It did not fade or glitch or anything neat like that. One second there were steel rafters and clean panels and the spiderweb of cabling I had seen every day for months. The next, the middle stretch of ceiling and the tops of the columns were black and sagging and half melted, like someone had poured a vat of acid and heat over them and let it cool mid-collapse. The new surface drooped in torn curls. Chunks of panel hung down on twisted brackets, already broken free in some other version of this hall. Patches of raw sky showed through gaps that did not exist in our building. For 3 heartbeats, long enough to register detail, not long enough to think. Those burned rafters belonged to us. Then gravity remembered its job. A slab of warped panel tore loose and dropped onto the central table. The impact flipped trays and snapped the table leg. A shower of charred fragments and dust came with it, hitting faces, bare arms, the floor. People screamed. One voice, then many. Someone bolted for the door. Someone else dove under the table and disappeared in the haze. I was already moving. The section of ceiling shuddered, as if the weight hanging from it did not quite match the strength of the bolts we had. Another slab peeled away. It looked like paper tearing if paper were made of metal and insulation. It dropped straight toward the table where the Lima 7 boy sat. He froze. He looked up at the falling mass like it was a train headlight. My body did what training had drilled into it. I slammed into him sideways, shoulder to chest, and drove him off the bench. The slab hit the table behind us with a heavy crack, the vibration jumping through concrete and into my knees. Trays and cutlery bounced. Something hard clipped the back of my boot. The air filled with a sharp, greasy stink, like burnt cooking oil and hair singed too close to a heating coil. People coughed, eyes watering. I rolled, shielding the boy as best I could. "All clear," I barked, though I did not know if that was true. "Stay on the ground. Do not crowd the doors." Over my shoulder, another support column flickered, just for a blink, like a light behind frosted glass, showing its burned version. Then it snapped back to clean. The mess hall alarms woke up in ragged sequence. Red strobes started along the walls. The siren wail pressed on my ribs. Guards converged, some pulling detainees away from the fallen panels, others forming a loose line between the chaos and the exits. A nurse dove in with a medkit, hair net askew. "Moreno," Gaz's voice cut through. "You breathing?" "Mostly," I called back. The boy under me made a small sound, half gasp and half sob. I shifted off him and checked his limbs with quick hands. "Anything feel wrong? Can you move everything?" He stared at his left forearm. The skin along the outer side was already reddening in a broad stripe, as if he had held it too close to a grill for too long. No broken skin, but the pattern was clean and straight. The kind of mark you got from pressing against a hot metal bar. He looked up at me. "The panel did not touch me," he whispered. "I know," I answered. "Do you feel dizzy?" Sick. It just hurt, he said, like it remembered. Old George's burn scars flashed in my head, that same side of the body. I squeezed his shoulder once, more to anchor myself than him. We will get medical to look at it, I told him. Stay seated, do not walk on it yet. A staffer hustled over with a stretcher for a woman who had taken a panel fragment to the shoulder. Blood ran down her sleeve in a slow line. She gritted her teeth and refused pain meds until they promised she could keep her daughter with her. I did not remember crossing the hall, but suddenly I was at the central table, checking for anyone pinned. The slab had dented the metal but not gone through. One man lay half under it, legs clear, torso pressed. His chest rose and fell in short, harsh breaths. "On my count," Gaz called from the other side. 3, 2, 1. We heaved. The slab shifted a few centimeters, enough for the man to wriggle free. His shirt stuck to the underside of the panel for a moment, then tore, leaving a smear of soot. Dr. Shelley appeared at my elbow, hair loose around her face, eyes too bright. "Anyone unconscious?" she asked. "Not for longer than a breath," I answered. "One crush risk, a few with cuts, kid with a weird burn." "Of course," she muttered. "Why not?" Security staff started herding detainees out, table by table, checking hands for makeshift weapons along the way, more from habit than logic. People moved stiffly, eyes locked on the ceiling where the burned section now hung half there, half not, switching between states like a bad transmission. As the last group reached the door, the burned stretch shivered. For a blink, the rafters were whole again, clean. Then the black sag returned. It was as if two versions of the room were fighting over which one was allowed to exist. "Evacuate!" Blackwood's voice cut through the hall speakers. "Full mess hall evac. Medical priority to structural impact injuries." I glanced up at the nearest camera, a small dark dome in the corner. No doubt he had watched the whole thing. We cleared the room. Once the last detainee had crossed the threshold, the emergency doors slid into place, sealing the hall. I heard the deep thud of locking bars slotting home. In the corridor, people were talking too loudly, too fast. Fear has a sound, words trying to outrun memory. Amita stood by the wall, one arm wrapped around a younger woman whose face was streaked with dust. Amita's gaze cut to me. "That normal?" she asked. "Structural failure," I asked. "Happens." "Structural failure from a ceiling that changed shape," she countered. "Do not insult me." I opened my mouth, shut it again. "You get us away from floods and collapsing streets," she went on, voice low and tight. "You bring us to a place that falls apart on its own. Do you understand how that feels from this side of the line?" "I understand that you are alive," I answered, "and that a minute ago you were under a ceiling that did not want to stay up." "That is not reassurance," she snapped. "That is a threat." Before I could answer, a junior guard jogged up, hand on his earpiece. "Moreno, command wants you. Briefing room, now." Of course they did. I left Gaz to coordinate the corridor and followed the guard through the intake wing to the inner admin block. The contrast always hit me. Detainee spaces built for durability and control, staff spaces for comfort they pretended was efficiency. Softer chairs, plants in corners, colour on the walls that did not match mud. Room 2 was already occupied when I stepped in. Blackwood stood at the wall console, hands braced on the edge, eyes fixed on the big screen. Dr. Shelley sat in a chair at the table, tablet in her lap. A third screen on the wall showed a blank field with the words, "Chronology Directorate Connection Active." I had never seen that line lit before. Rumour said the Chronology Directorate was a whole other branch of the authority, the people who dealt with the Shepherd arrays and branch modelling. They were the ones who decided which drowning worlds got rescue and which did not. "Moreno," Blackwood greeted me without turning. "Sit." I took the chair opposite Dr. Shelley. The chronology screen came to life with a static logo, a circle with a broken line around it. No face, of course not. If you make branch-level decisions, you do not show your eyes to the people on the ground. A voice came from the speaker, smooth and genderless, flattened by filters. "Officer George Moreno," the voice began. "Thank you for attending on short notice." "You have my full attention," I replied. "As much as you want, considering part of my ceiling just tried to kill my detainees." Dr. Shelley shifted, like she wanted to kick me under the table, and remembered she was in flats. "We have reviewed the incident feed," the voice continued. "The event in your mess hall is consistent with a Type 3 instability flare." I frowned. Type 3 meaning what in words a guard can use. "Cross-branch structural overlap," the voice answered. "A localized region in your facility briefly aligned with its counterpart in another branch undergoing catastrophic failure. The burned ceiling you saw is from a version of Camp Anabasis that has already collapsed." "So the part that fell," I asked, "was ours or theirs?" "Both during the overlap," the voice replied. "After alignment ended, your structure retained some damage. This is expected." "Expected," I repeated. "Is there anything about this that is not expected?" Dr. Shelley cleared her throat. "The spontaneous burns on the boy's arm," she added. "I have 2 other cases from this morning. Skin trauma with no direct contact with heat sources. The pattern on one matches a restraint strap none of us recognize." "Those correlate with cross-branch injury transfer," the voice replied. "We have seen it before around Nexus clusters." "Nexus clusters meaning M-class detainees," I cut in. A pause. "Yes," the voice answered. "Where multiple instances of a high-impact individual co-locate, the probability of branch overlap and injury transfer rises. That is why strict protocols exist for handling M-class arrivals." "You did not mention ceiling panels and phantom burns in the training," I told them. "You would not have taken the post," the voice replied, "and we require you there." Blackwood shot me a quick look as if to say, "This is not the time." I ignored it. "Require me for what exactly?" I asked. "Because from where I stand, I am walking people into a facility that is leaking other people's disasters." "You are there," the chronology voice answered. "Because across many branches you are present at this facility during high-stakes crises and your choices materially affect survival rates. You are a temporal nexus." "You keep using that word like it means hero," I muttered. Old me made it sound more like curse. "That older instance is contaminated by failure," the voice snapped, the smoothness cracking for the first time. "His perspective is distorted by the pain of his own branch collapse. He will prioritize local emotional relief over global stabilization." "That a local emotional relief is what I call not letting my mess hall crush teenagers," I replied. Blackwood lifted a hand. "George." "No," I told him. "You sat in this room and watched the ceiling trade costumes with a burned version of this place, and your first move is a briefing. You could at least be honest about what you expect me to do when the next version comes down." "The next version," the voice resumed, back to smooth, "is exactly why we are contacting you now. Instability flares of this magnitude predict escalation. There is a threshold beyond which preservation of your branch ceases to be viable." "You are telling me my reality has an expiration date," I translated. "We are telling you that Camp Anabasis operates near a branch convergence point," the voice answered. "If instability exceeds bounds, our models indicate either total collapse or uncontrolled proliferation, both of which are unacceptable." "So what do you do?" I asked. "When your models tell you a place like this is going to burn?" Silence again, this time shorter. "We implement resolution protocol," the voice responded. The phrase dropped into the room like a stone. I glanced at Blackwood. "You heard that before?" His jaw clenched. "Once." "Resolution protocol," the voice went on, "authorizes accelerated extraction or termination of high-risk individuals within an unstable node in order to reduce cross-branch interference. In lay terms, we remove or neutralize the elements causing feedback." "The elements being people," I said, "like M-class detainees." "And occasionally their primary local instance," the voice conceded, "if their continued presence prevents stabilization." I leaned back. The chair felt less sturdy than it had when I sat down. "You are telling me that if your graphs do not like what they see, I summarized. You will order this camp to kill or disappear the people who trigger the numbers, and you call that resolution. We call it triage at scale, the voice replied. Your role, Officer Moreno, is to implement instructions when they arrive. Your personal instance has demonstrated both effectiveness and compliance in prior runs. We believe you can do so again. Prior runs. There it was, spoken like a weather report. Walk me through that, I said. In those prior runs, did I help you drag my own copies into whatever you call neutralization? In several branches, the voice answered, you executed transfer directives that removed M-class detainees from the facility. In some, the process went as planned. In others, local interference caused breakdowns. Breakdowns like fires, I pressed. Yes. Did they save billions? You keep throwing that number around when you want someone to swallow something sharp. We have evidence that proper execution of resolution protocol in one branch prevented cross-contamination leading to large-scale failures in adjacent lines, the voice replied. You do not need the full data structures to understand the importance. You are right, I told them. I do not need full data structures. I need to know how many people you put in the incinerator for that number. Dr. Shelley looked at me, eyes wide. Blackwood shut his own briefly, then opened them again. Moreno, he said quietly, this is not helping. It is helping me, I answered. The chronology voice softened, which somehow felt worse. Officer Moreno, it went on, we understand this is distressing. We do not ask you to enjoy it. We ask you to fulfill the function that your unique position allows. You stand at a pivot. Your willingness to make short-term sacrifices protects countless lives in branches you will never see. I thought of the boy's arm, the stripe of skin reddened by someone else's metal. Of old George's burns, thick and shiny, of ceiling panels dropping out of realities I would never walk. If I refuse, I asked, if I do not carry out your resolution when you decide it is time. The temperature in the room felt like it shifted, though I knew it had not. In some branches, the voice answered, local refusal correlates with wider collapse. We cannot force you to comply, but we can adjust variables around you. Your assignment, your access, your continued existence. You are threatening me, I said. We are informing you of stakes, the voice replied. Protocol details will be transmitted to Colonel Blackwood under secure seal. You will receive orders through him when and if implementation becomes necessary. Until then, do your job. Keep the camp functioning. Minimize unrest. Avoid further instability triggers. And the M-class detainees, I asked. You want me to keep playing host to my own ghosts until you decide whether to burn them? Treat them as standard displaced persons, the voice repeated. Do not engage their claims about prior loops beyond what is required for documentation. They cannot see the whole picture. You cannot either. Only the aggregate matters at our scale. The screen cut to black. The room stayed quiet long enough for me to hear my own breathing. It felt too fast in my chest. I forced it slower. Dr. Shelley pinched the bridge of her nose. That, she murmured, could have gone worse. Really? I stared at her. In your version, what part counts as better? The bit where they promised to erase me if I grow a spine, or the bit where they turned fire drills into moral philosophy? She dropped her hand. You were waiting for honesty, she said. You just got more of it than most guards see in a lifetime. They told you what resolution is. Most sites get a 3-line order. I rubbed my face. What do you expect me to do with that? I asked. Besides lose sleep. Keep the camp stable, Blackwood answered. We are not at threshold yet. Instability flare or not. Yet, I echoed. He finally turned from the console and looked straight at me. I will get the sealed protocol after this, he told me. You will not. You will get duties, patrols, supervisory tasks, the same way you did yesterday. That is how you help, George. You let me handle the rest. You mean you let them use you as the hand that turns the key so I can pretend mine are clean? I replied. He flinched, just slightly. You think the key is any lighter in my fingers? For a second, I saw past his uniform to a man who had signed other orders in other rooms and carried those decisions alone. Then, the uniform came back. "This conversation stays in this room," he added. "No staff gossip. No telling detainees that the ceiling ghosts are from their alternate deaths. We do not feed panic." "Understood," I answered. He held my gaze a moment longer, then looked away. "You are on evening perimeter," he informed me. "Go walk your fence. Let me deal with command." I left before I said something that would make that impossible. The next few days tried very hard to be normal. We patched the mess hall ceiling with temporary plates and cordoned off the damaged tables. Detainees grumbled about the closure and the extra walking to alternate meal stations. Guards grumbled about the overtime. Medical wrapped burns and wrote notes. Psych doubled appointment slots. The ceiling over the central aisle stayed solid. No more sudden costume changes. No more panels dropping from someone else's disaster. That did not make the memory less loud. Old George watched me during my rounds. He had a window in his door now, reinforced polyglass the size of my hand. On another day, in another world, I might have asked who put it in and why. "You look like you met the voice," he remarked the next time I stopped outside his cell. "I met a logo with speakers," I answered. "Same thing." He stretched his legs, joints popping. "They give you a name for the fire yet?" "Resolution Protocol," I told him. "Apparently you and I have history with it." He laughed without humor. "They make it sound clean, do they not? Resolution. Like a meeting where everyone agrees to try harder next quarter." "You told me they watched this place burn," I reminded him. "You did not mention they were the ones holding the matches." "They do not see it that way," he replied. "In their minds, the fire comes from us. We are the faulty wiring. They are the ones shutting off power before the building catches." "Nice metaphor," I muttered. "I will be sure to use it in my next psyche eval." He watched my face. "They told you your role?" he asked. "They asked me to be compliant in my own execution. More poetic in their language, but that is the gist." He nodded, as if checking a box. "Good," he said. "Now you can get to the interesting part." "Which is?" "Deciding where you are willing to lie." I stared at him. "You keep bringing that up." "Because that is where we all thought we could fix it at first," he answered. "You cannot punch the chronology directorate. They have too many walls and too much distance. You can lie in your own little box and see what ripples. You understand that as a guard, I am not supposed to experiment with reality," I told him. "I am supposed to keep things predictable." "I understand you already live in someone else's experiment," he returned. "The only question is whether you pretend their controls are neutral." He shifted his weight and winced. One hand went to his ribs. "You all right?" "Just an overlap twinge. Some other me tripped on a stair once. The bruise never quite got the memo about retiring." His humor helped, which annoyed me. I finished my rounds, logged my notes. No fights, no contraband, 2 minor verbal disputes that resolved without force. Nothing that screamed pivot. What did not show up in the log was the constant buzz in my head that every small choice now might connect to something bigger. Who I assigned to which work detail. When I opened a door. Who I believed. On the 4th day, after the mess hall flare, a maintenance worker flagged me in Block C. He was short, wiry with a tool belt that looked heavier than his legs. "Officer Moreno," he called from under an open floor panel. "You have to look at this. Unless it is contraband or a tunnel, you do not actually need me," I pointed out. "Your line is infrastructure." "This is both," he grunted, levering himself up. "Sort of." He pointed his flashlight down into the gap. I crouched and peered in. A thick bundle of cables and fluid lines ran under the panel as expected. One of the softer conduits had a crack in its casing, and a dark paste had seeped out and dried. Not water, not sewage. The maintenance worker's nose wrinkled. "What am I looking at?" "Fire suppression feed. Runs from the main tanks down to sub-level 3, or it used to. Something cooked this stretch. melted the casing and set off a partial discharge. I do not know how we did not lose pressure. Sub-level 3, I repeated. We only have 2. He gave me a look like I had grown an extra head. We have 3. Storage and systems. You think all the pumps and backup generators sit on the roof? I have been here months, I said. No one mentioned a 3rd level. That is above my pay grade, he replied. But if this line is compromised, your fancy hidden floor is not getting full coverage if something blows. He had just handed me 2 things at once, a maintenance problem and a map problem. What is below this block? He shrugged. I am not cleared that far. My schematics just show service access restricted and a big blank. You want the detailed map? Talk to admin. Or find one of your detainees who has been around long enough to count doors. He grinned, half mocking, half nervous. I closed the panel and thanked him, logged the leak, moved on. I did not go to admin. Admin would give me the same sanitized building diagram I had already memorized. 2 floors clearly labeled, nothing interesting below. I needed someone whose job was to see past what we wrote on walls. That meant Amita. I found her in the Block B common area, sitting on the floor with a circle of women and 2 kids. They had a spread of cards and scraps of paper between them. It looked like a game. When I got closer, I saw it was a crude layout of the camp. You run your own orientation now? I asked. Teaching the new ones how to get from beds to mess without pissing off guards, she replied. The map you give us is useless. We do not give you a map, I pointed out, and that is my point. The papers were pieces of old packaging and forms, torn and labelled in careful block letters. Barracks here, mess there, medical, intake, arrows for routes. She had even marked the spots where guards like to linger, represented by little drawn triangles. Artistic, I commented. She gave me a look. You here to confiscate my dangerous pens? Relax, I told her. I am off confiscation duty for the hour. I need your brain. That is new. You get tired of borrowing ours without admitting it? I crouched, ignoring her audience's smothered grins. In your map, I asked, you ever notice a door that does not fit? Somewhere access is restricted with no label. Staff going in and out where there is supposedly just wall. Her eyes sharpened. Why? Because maintenance just found a fire line feeding something below Block C that does not exist on my schematic. And after what happened in the mess hall, I am not in the mood for surprise levels. She tapped her finger on one of the papers, thinking. There is a stairwell off the laundry corridor. Marked staff only. We never see anyone go in, but there is always a camera watching it. No traffic, but they treat it like a prize. Show me. She raised one brow. Now? Now. She stood, dusting off her jumpsuit. Anyone moves my map, she warned the circle. I will relocate your socks during wash cycle. They chuckled. She jerked her chin toward the corridor. I followed, keeping my posture casual. A guard walking and chatting with a detainee did not register as odd. A guard and detainee sneaking would. The laundry corridor was one of the camp's less glamorous arteries. Warm, noisy, lined with big industrial machines that ate clothes and sheets and spit them out marginally cleaner. Detainees on work duty moved between hoppers with baskets, heads down, hands busy. Amita led me past the main door to the washer room, then another leading to storage, then stopped at what looked like a blank stretch of wall. Here, she said. Watch the corner. She tilted her chin up. I followed her gaze. A small camera bubble sat tucked into the corner, pointed at what was, to my eye, nothing. No door, no keypad, just flat wall panels. I frowned. I do not remember this. You probably fly past here on your way to shift change, she replied. Or you remember when there was a door because your schematic tells you. Watch. She stepped closer. The camera tracked her. As it did, the wall panel nearest the corner shimmered at the edge. Not a light trick. More like a thin layer of something transparent resetting. A faint rectangular outline appeared, flush with the wall, Hidden hinges, a handle recess, no external keypad. The kind of door you do not want people to know exists. Then, as she stepped back, the outline blurred out again. "You see?" she asked. I did, too clearly. "How long has this been here?" "As long as I have." We started counting cameras. Some had no obvious reason. This was one. We tried pressing the panel. Nothing. I looked around. The corridor was busy enough that anyone watching the monitors would see us, but not close enough that they would hear. "You know, this is the part where I'm supposed to tell you to go back to your block and forget this," I said. "You also know how bad you are at that." She was not wrong. "Thank you. Go back to your game. If anyone asks, you were complaining about socks." She smirked. "I am always complaining about socks." She turned and walked away, posture loose, nothing in her stride to flag suspicion. I waited until she had gone and the corridor traffic shifted. 2 laundry staff pushed a cart past. A guard I knew by sight, Ortez, trundled by carrying a box of detergent. He nodded to me and kept moving. When the space around the hidden door thinned for a breath, I stepped up to the panel and set my hand flat against it. Cold. Solid. Then, just for a fraction of a second, a faint give under my palm, like pressing on thick film. My hand terminal buzzed. Access denied. Clearance level insufficient. I pulled back. The wall looked smooth again. So, there was a door. My clearance knew it, even if my eyes only half did. It led somewhere with its own fire suppression line. Somewhere they did not want detainees or regular guards to see. I walked away before the cameras could record me staring at it too long. I spent that evening reading maintenance logs instead of sleeping. Guards were not supposed to be bored enough to do that. Logs were for supervisors and auditors. Most line officers skimmed their shift reports and ignored the rest. Tonight, the glowing columns felt like a map of my cage. I pulled up fire suppression inspections, starting from the camp's construction date forward. Pressure checks, valve replacements, tank refills. Most entries were routine, stamped in neat intervals. Then, 6 months before my assignment, a cluster of red entries around sublevel 3. System reset, damage control. Details. Subfloor access sealed pending review. Multiple panel failures. Incident referenced under classified event code. After that, sub-level 3 items went quiet. Not resolved, not repaired, just locked. I opened my own assignment orders. Buried 3 pages down in the transfer justification was a line I had skimmed before. Placement recommended for high resilience officer with prior crisis exposure. Nexus profile, active. Old George's voice floated back. They picked you because you are consistent. I closed the file. On impulse, I cross-referenced guard rosters from before that damage cluster. The system dragged up names. A few I recognized from rumor. A few I had never heard. One caught my eye. More curiosity than reason at first. It was a surname I knew better than my own reflection now. Moreno, George, security officer. Assignment, Anabasis. The date on his entry was stamped 2 years before my own. There were termination codes attached to his name, not the usual ones, transfer out, medical leave, disciplinary removal. This one read branch, event, final, no location, no follow-up. Of course, I breathed. They had not just modeled me in branches I would never see. They had run another me through this place in this reality and scrubbed him out under a neat little code. I pushed away from the console and walked. The path to old George's cell blurred. Corridor, stairs, turns, my boots knew it. He stood when I opened the door. No window this time. I had asked that it stay opaque on my rounds. It made it easier to pretend he did not exist when I needed to. I found the basement, I told him. He smiled, slow and grim. Of course you did. You never could leave a door alone. They patched a fire suppression line feeding a level my clearance pretends is imaginary, I went on. There is a hidden access door off laundry. Maintenance logs show panel failures and damage control. They sealed the level 6 months before I got here. There is a terminated officer on the roster with my name and branch event final next to it. 2 years before my assignment, they burned a version of me here, in this reality, and then hired me a second time. He watched my face as I spoke, as if ticking off points on an internal list. Good, he said again. That is all you have. Good? It means we are on the same page, he answered. You stop letting them narrate your role. Now we can talk about the part where you pick your own lines. I gripped the back of the single chair in the room until my fingers ached. I am a guard, I told him. Not a saboteur, not a martyr. Whatever you remember doing down there, that is not me. You are right, he replied. It is me. I did not have you to warn me. He sat back on the bed, one hand absently rubbing at the burn scar along his neck. You want to see it? He asked. What? Sub-level 3, or what is left of it. The sealed door, the scorch marks, the rigs. They closed it in your run, but the bones are there. You have no clearance, I argued. You are a detainee. You cannot get past laundry. You think they removed my memory, along with my clearance, he countered. I know the code they used, at least in my branch. Maintenance access, emergency override. Codes change, I pointed out. Some do, he agreed. Some do not. They reuse patterns, they get lazy. They think no one else is watching. I stared at him. Every instinct I had screamed that taking a detainee's guidance to access a sealed level was career suicide, or literal suicide, depending on what waited downstairs. What do you expect me to do? I asked. Take your hand, skip past cameras, stroll into their forbidden basement like we are on a tour. No, I expect you to keep doing your rounds until the next convenient glitch. Power flickers, fire alarms, they always happen. Then you go alone. I am not asking you to drag me on a field trip. I am asking you what you are going to do when you see what I already saw. I thought of the chronology voice telling me about resolution, of Blackwood promising to handle the protocol, of the boy's burned arm. You keep pushing this like a puzzle, I told old George. Like if I find the right hidden door, everything lines up. What if all that waits down there is more proof I have no good options? Then you will at least know which lie you are telling, he answered quietly. I let out a breath through my teeth. Fine. I will find a way down. Alone. You stay in this room, and do not talk anyone else into heroics. His mouth quirked. I am too tired for heroics, he replied. I am just trying to be useful before they wipe this branch. The glitch came 2 days later during a storm. Storm was generous. Out here on the high plain, weather meant wind and dust and sky that turned the color of old bruises. Lightning forked in the distance, close enough to make the perimeter sensors twitchy. The camp's power grid hiccuped once, twice, then settled into a lower, dimmer hum. Safeties kicked in. Non-essential systems spun down. Corridor lights went to emergency strips. Cameras shifted to lower resolution. Over the intercom, a generic voice announced, Power conservation mode active. All non-critical staff remain at posts. Movement restrictions in effect. Movement restrictions sounded like a problem. They were a gift. Emergency mode meant some doors defaulted to manual release, easier to open if you were already inside, harder to open if you were outside. It also meant security was busy with the perimeter and the main gate, stressed about lightning hitting the fence. No one cared about laundry. I took the long way there, doing a real patrol while my heart tried to crawl up my throat. I checked locks, nodded to guards, made sure no detainees were using the dim corridors as cover for mischief. Nothing out of place. At the laundry corridor, the lights were a thin line along the floor. Machines sat quiet. Work crews had been sent back to blocks until power stabilized. The camera in the corner above the hidden door still watched. Its little status LED glowed steady. The lens moved to follow me as I stepped into view. Just me, I told it aloud. Checking for leaks. I put one hand on the wall beside the hidden panel and crouched as if inspecting the base. My other hand slipped to my belt where my keycard hung. I palmed the emergency override chip. It was a simple piece of metal and plastic that opened doors during fires and lockdowns, bypassing some locks under a coded pattern. We used it for drills. Old George claimed the same pattern worked on the sub-level access in his run. I did not have his code. I had mine. I pressed the chip against the wall at hip height, where a normal panel would be. For a moment, nothing. Then a faint vibration under my palm. The wall warmed, a whisper of temperature against skin. Access pending, my terminal displayed. Then, after a heartbeat that stretched too far, clearance override granted. The outline of the door sharpened, the panel's surface shading a fraction darker. A narrow seam appeared, vertical, like a mouth opening. "Of course," I breathed. "Lazy bastards." I slipped inside as soon as the gap was wide enough, closing it behind me with a touch. The space on the other side was a narrow stairwell, concrete and steel, lit by a single strip overhead. It felt like the bottom of a well. No cameras that I could see, no obvious sensors, just stairs leading down into the guts of the camp. I took them. Each step felt like it carried a weight my ankles registered before my brain did. This was not just disobeying an order. This was peeling back a layer they had hidden. The first landing led to sub-level 1, the systems floor I knew from drills. Generator rooms, water pumps, storage. I kept going. Sub-level 2 smelled of machine oil and detergent, a mix of maintenance and storage. Racks of unused beds, sealed crates, backup supplies. I did not pause. Sub-level 3 greeted me with a door that had been forced once and then badly repaired. The frame was bent out of true. The sealant around the edges had bubbled and hardened, like someone had poured it in a hurry after metal had deformed under heat. A sign hung crooked on the door. Authorized personnel only. The paint blistered where fire had licked it. I pressed the emergency chip to the release. For a moment I thought it would fail. Then the lock clunked, sluggish, and the door pushed inward. Heat hit me first, not from the air, but from memory. The space beyond was cool now, the temperature drop of an underground room. My body remembered something else. The corridor beyond was blackened along one side. The walls bore long streaks of soot. Ceiling tiles were missing in patches, exposing raw concrete and twisted cable. Emergency lights cast a dull orange along the floor. I stepped in. Footprints marked the dust, old, blurred, overlapping, some booted, some bare. Some looked like mine. Same tread pattern as my standard-issue boots. On the right, a heavy door hung half open, its inner face warped. The tiny window in it was gone, glass melted into a rippled smear along the sill. Inside was a room big enough for 3 hospital beds. None were there now. Indentation marks on the floor told me they had once been bolted in. Burn streaks radiated out from those points, as if something had exploded or burned fast. On the far wall, metal frames jutted out, shaped like coffins without sides. Each frame had clamps along its length, places to secure limbs, torso, head. Cables ran from the heads of the frames into a charred panel. Extraction rigs, I realized, or something close. I walked closer. In the dim light, one of the frames showed a set of scorched markings along the metal where someone's skin had stuck and torn. The pattern on the clamps matched the faint burn stripe on the boy's arm. Same width, same spacing. "Welcome to the part they do not put in the brochure," a voice drawled behind me. I spun, hand going to my baton. Sergeant Gaz leaned in the doorway, arms folded. His face was set in hard lines I did not see often. No smirk, no easy slouch. "How the hell did you get past the door?" I asked. He lifted his keycard, letting it dangle. "Turns out they trust me too," he replied. "Not as much as you, obviously, but enough to mop up after you." "After me?" He nodded toward the rigs. "You were on duty last time we used these," he went on. "You do not remember because technically it did not happen. New branch, clean logs. That is the deal you cut when you work here. Or the deal they cut on your behalf, more likely. You knew this was here, I said. Oh, I knew there was a place, he answered. Details? They keep those on a short leash. I knew we had a failure event, fire involved. I knew you were reassigned after. I did not know they would bring you back for a sequel. I looked at him. How long have you known about me? I asked. About other me. He scratched at his beard. Rumors first, he replied. Whispers about a guard who kept coming back in different stories. Then I saw your file redacted in places with notes I could not open. You do not have to be a genius to put it together. You show up again with the same scar and different hire date. You start asking questions about boxes in the floor. That is confirmation. You never thought to warn me, I pushed. Warn you of what? He countered. That we work in a magic trick? You would have told command. They would have given you a pat on the head and a new NDA, and I would have a disciplinary note for inducing instability. He stepped into the room, eyes on the rigs. I came down here once after the fire, he went on cleanup detail. The walls were still hot. We had to pull out melted restraints. There were marks in the concrete where people clawed at it. I told myself they were already dead in their branches, that we were just handling leftovers. He ran his fingers along a charred clamp, then snatched them back like it bit. It still felt wrong, he finished. I watched his hand. It shook once, then steadied. What did you do with the bodies? He did not answer. You good, Sergeant? I pressed. He cleared his throat. I am still here. That is what counts, right? That is what they tell us. He turned to me. Why are you here, George? You never once came down on cleanup with me before. You did your interviews, your rounds, your reports. You stayed topside and let the rest of us deal with the basement. Something in his tone made my skin tighten. There was blame there, old and sour. I found the maintenance logs, I answered. I saw my name with branch event final. I wanted to know what branch event looked like. Looks like this. Looks like them bringing us new sheets and telling us the next group will be easier. A distant clang travelled through the sublevel, the sound of metal shifting somewhere beyond. Both of us flinched. You know command will fry us if they catch us down here, Gaz muttered. You have been down here before, I pointed out. On orders. That is the difference. You dragged me into unsanctioned stupidity. For once, I told him, I'm glad you followed me. He snorted, but some of the tightness in his face eased. Familiar patterns, even in hell. We need to get out before they notice the door open, he said. One more thing, I argued. Then we go. He hesitated, then nodded. We searched the control panel. Most of it was dead. A few status lights glowed a faint, sickly orange. No power to the main rig, but the data terminals still held content. I jacked my terminal into a port that looked half melted. The screen populated with names, detainee IDs, codes, a list of procedures flagged under resolution. Each entry had a timestamp. Many had a status tag, completed. A few read aborted, others read lost. At the top of the list, one field was highlighted in red. Moreno, completed branch event final. My head rang. You do not have to read that, Gaz murmured. I already did, I replied. I disconnected before I saw the details. I did not trust myself to keep it together if I watched a recording of myself carrying out the order the voice had just promised to ask of me again. We go, I told him. We left the rigs, the scorch marks, the weight of old choices behind, and climbed back up toward light. In the laundry corridor, the hidden door sealed with a soft shift of air. The camera tracked us. You going to report this? Gaz asked. I thought of old George, of his warning about the first lie, of the chronology voice, of Blackwood carrying sealed protocols in his pocket. If I do not, I answered, you take the fall if someone notices a curious error in door logs. If you do, he countered, we both take the fall. One for breaking into the haunted basement, one for not stopping you. I held his eyes. I will write it up, I decided, but not like it happened. He blinked. You sure about that? No, but I am done letting them write every line. The incident report read simple. During power conservation mode, Routine patrol of lower levels detected legacy damage to sub-level access door. Door integrity confirmed. No breach. Maintenance notified. I left out the part where the door opened. I left out sub-level 3 entirely. I left out gas. I left out rigs and burnt clamps and my own name on the resolution list. As I typed, it felt like pressing my hand into hot sand. I submitted the report to the system. A small alert pinged. Pending review, command priority. It took less than an hour for Blackwood to summon me. His office sat just off the main command room, a glass-fronted box with blinds he rarely used. Today, they were down. I stepped in. He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "You skipped a level in your report," he observed, tapping his pad. "Care to explain?" "Sub-level 2 showed minor fire damage," I answered. "Door intact, no immediate threat. I logged it. Sub-level 3 does not exist on guard schematics. Yet you typed sub-level access instead of systems door. That is a maintenance term, one you do not usually use." I held his gaze. My pulse thudded in my neck. "Maintenance worker flagged a leak feeding a lower level," I told him. "He called it sub-level 3. The phrase stuck. A slip, not a conspiracy." "Is that so?" He studied me. "And you did not try the door?" "I am many things," I answered, "but I am not suicidal." He leaned back, watching my face for any twitch. "We have a problem, George," he said at last. "Power anomalies, temporal flares, M-class clusters, command breathing down our necks with resolution speeches. I need to know which variables I can count on and which are going to spin off under pressure." "You think I am going to spin off?" I asked. "Because I know what is in your basement." He did not blink. "I think you are under strain," he replied. "You met an older instance of yourself who filled your head with every failure he remembers. You have chronology whispering in your ear about global stakes. You have me telling you to keep walking rounds and not overthink. That is a lot for one spine." "You picked it," I reminded him. "Do not flatter yourself," he returned. "They picked you. I just signed the forms." We stared at each other across the desk. "If you lie to me," he went on, "we lose more than correct records. We lose the ability to react correctly when it counts. The last time that happened, we had a corridor full of fire and bodies." I thought of the rigs downstairs, the burn patterns, the marks in the floor. "You saying that was my fault?" "I am saying your choices were one part of a chain. Mine too. Gases, commands, the whole cursed machine. I am not interested in blame. I am interested in this. When the next order comes, when resolution stops being a line in a briefing and becomes a directive in my hand, are you going to carry it, or are you going to make me treat you like a risk factor?" He had dragged the future right onto the desk between us. No theory, no euphemism. "If the next order is to drag people I know to those things downstairs and call it transfer," I said, "I am not going to do it quietly. Then we both have a problem." "Looks that way," I agreed. We sat with that for a beat. "You left Gaz out of your report," he noted. "He was off duty in that sector, yet the door logs show his card pinged in the same time frame as yours. Interesting oversight." He met me in the corridor. He did not enter the stairwell. He was curious about the leak. That is all. "So you lie for him now too," Blackwood observed. "Noted." A small part of me wanted to take it back. To correct the record, clear Gaz, dump the full truth on the table and watch what command did with it. A bigger part had already stepped over that line the moment I edited the sub-level out. "You will get more use out of a loyal sergeant than an accurate door log," I replied. His lips thinned. "You are tilting your own way now, just like the others. That's supposed to scare me. It is supposed to remind you how those runs ended." He tapped his screen, closing my report. "Get out of my office. Walk your rounds. Keep people from tearing each other apart. Until I receive different orders, that is your function. Do not make me choose between my job and whatever you think yours is now." I stood. "Colonel." He did not look up. Outside, the camp moved in its usual rhythms, guards switching shifts, detainees shuffling to work details. The mess hall still half cordoned off, the patched ceiling pretending nothing had ever been wrong. In Block B's common area, Amita scooped up her paper map as I passed, folding it quick. Her eyes searched my face, question there. I did not stop. I could not yet tell her what I had seen without making her part of a choice I had barely begun to understand. On my way past old George's cell, I slowed. The door was closed, window blank. No sound from inside. For all the world, it could have been empty. You lied. His voice drifted through the metal, muffled but clear enough. I can hear it in your step. I rested my palm against the cool surface. For Gaz, I answered, and a maintenance worker who did not ask to be part of this. And for yourself, he added. Do not forget that part. He was not wrong. The first lie was in the system now, wrapped around a door no one wanted to talk about. It had not burned the camp down. The mess hall still stood. The walls still held. But something had changed. A small, hard thing in me had clicked out of alignment with the machine I worked for. I did not feel like just a guard walking rounds in someone else's script. I felt like someone who had nudged the line on the page barely and was waiting to see how the drawing changed. 3 days after I filed the half-true report about the basement, Anabasis stopped pretending it was one camp. It started arguing with itself. It began on morning perimeter. The sky was clear, the kind of pale blue that looks painted on. I walked the fence line with Gaz, both of us quiet, boots crunching gravel. You hear the new rumor? He asked. Which one? I kept my eyes on the yard, counting bodies at the far exercises pens. That the ceiling stunt in the mess was a test, he went on. Command trying out crowd control. If that was a test, they failed, I answered. Our mess hall does not double as a firing range. Yet, he muttered. By the north tower, a guard leaned on the rail, peering out over the plain. I glanced up to check his posture, then looked past him at the horizon. For half a breath, the fence was gone. In its place, a long line of bent pylons, some snapped fully, the coil along the top sagging, half melted. The ground at their base was dark and uneven, like it had been scraped and scorched. The tower where the guard stood was a twisted stump, empty. Then it snapped back, pylons upright, coil neat, guard yawning. I stopped. You see that? I asked. Gaz frowned. See what? The fence, I broke off. Sounding like a detainee having a flash was not a good look for a guard. As if the camp heard my thought and wanted to prove a point, the yard shifted. Across the field, the accommodation blocks stuttered, like frames of an old video misaligned. For a fraction of a second, the nearest block wore a black skin. Windows blown, roof collapsed on one side, walls streaked dark from top to bottom. Then the clean version pulled over it again. People in the yard froze. A ball rolled away from a group of kids and came to rest at the shadow line of the fence. You see that? I repeated. Gaz's face had gone tight. Yeah, he breathed. I see that. Alarms started in the distance. Not the narrow tone for a fight or a medical emergency. This was the full facility alert, the one they had drilled into us for branch-level anomalies, the one they promised we would probably never hear. Here we go, Gaz murmured. The intercom activated along the fence. All guards to primary stations, the system voice ordered. All detainees to nearest enclosed area. Emergency protocol Tethys. This is not a drill. My terminal buzzed with the same message, priority flag blinking. Perimeter towers? I asked. Online, Gaz answered. For now. We moved. Guards peeled off to towers and choke points. Detainees were herded from yard to barracks, some willingly, some dragged. The sky stayed that fake calm blue, while the ground under it disagreed about what year it was. On my way to the command block, the mess hall swung in and out of damage twice. One moment, the patched ceiling and tarp tables I recognized. The next, a hollow box with the roof caved in and char along the walls, metal rafters sagging like broken ribs. In the charred version, shapes lay on the floor. People. I did not let myself look long enough to count. The command room was a knot of activity, screens on every wall, each showing a different part of the camp. Some feeds jittered between clean and ruined versions fast enough to blur. Dr. Shelley stood near the back, tablet clutched to her chest, face pale. Colonel Blackwood waited near the main console with his shoulders set like he was bracing for a wave. Next to him, the Chronology Directorate logo had already bloomed on a large screen, circle with broken line. "Moreno," Blackwood greeted me, terse. "Front." I stepped up beside him. My eyes flicked to the screen. "Officer George Moreno," the filtered voice rolled out smooth as ever. "You are present." "I am," I answered. "Camp is currently arguing with its dead cousins. Any tips?" "The surge indicates branch convergence at or beyond safe threshold," the voice responded. "Containment failure is imminent." "What does that mean in straight terms?" I pressed. "Do we have minutes? Hours?" "Temporal volatility is not perfectly predictable," the voice replied. "But based on current indicators, we project full structural destabilization within the facility inside one local day, possibly sooner if panic escalates. So the place will tear itself apart," I concluded. "Good to know." Blackwood's jaw worked. "We have received resolution protocol authorization," he interjected. "Level 1. A panel on his console glowed red. "Resolution package ready," it read. "Level 1 covers what?" I asked. "Targeted removal of high-risk nodes," the Chronology voice explained. "In your case, all Moreno-class detainees, plus identified Nexus individuals whose survival significantly worsens cross-branch interference." "Nexus individuals like who?" M01, M02, M03, more M codes with my name attached. Under them, an additional set, Amita Das, 2 other detainee names I recognized from incident reports. At the bottom, as if tacked on, Dr. Suri Hale. "And yourself," the voice added. "Officer Moreno is already flagged." My guts tightened. "You want me dead too?" "We require your local instance removed from this convergence," the voice replied. "Either by termination or by displacement into a branch where your presence does not amplify instability." "Nice that you give options," I muttered. "You will receive transfer orders," the voice went on. "Under cover of relocation to a safer site, you will escort the listed individuals to sub-level 3. There, resolution hardware will enact neutralization or directed extraction as appropriate." "Including me?" I asked. "Including you," the voice confirmed. "Your self-transfer will be supervised by Colonel Blackwood in the final phase." Blackwood's hands were fists on the edge of the console. "You have run this scenario before," I reminded the logo. "How does it end if I do what you want?" "In branches where resolution is fully executed," the voice answered. "Local casualties are contained to the facility or immediate area. Cross-branch interference drops. Wider collapses are mitigated." "And in the branches where I refuse?" "Instability proliferates," the voice replied. "Adjacent nodes experience similar failures. Populations orders of magnitude larger are impacted. So either I help you kill a few hundred people I know, or I stand aside and billions die. That about right?" "Precision aside, yes," the voice responded. Dr. Shelley stepped forward. "You are still framing the numbers. We do not know those projections hold in every run. You have a handful of models and a lot of faith." "Our models are sufficient," the voice returned. "You are not in a position to second-guess them. I am the one who has to stand in front of people and tell them they're going to a safer site, while I know they are being fed into your machine." She shot back. "That gives me some position." "Dr. Shelley," Blackwood warned. She drew in a breath through her nose and stepped back. Her hands trembled around the tablet. The voice continued, as if nothing had happened. "Officer Moreno," it concluded, "you will carry out the transfers under Colonel Blackwood's direction. Guards loyal to him will secure sub-level access. Any deviation from protocol will be treated as an additional threat vector and addressed accordingly." The screen went dark. The command room felt smaller. No questions? I asked. It came out more brittle than I intended. Blackwood met my gaze. You have made your feelings on resolution clear, he reminded me. I cannot give you the comfort of agreeing with you right now. You could give me the comfort of refusing, I replied. And then what? He countered. They cut power, drop support, drop a different unit in here who will shoot everyone on that list in the yard. At least this way we control the manner and limit collateral. He told himself that. I could see it in his posture. It did not make the math cleaner. The orders, I asked. He tapped his pad. Transfer manifests will go out to block supervisors in 10 minutes, he told me. Moreno-class detainees and flagged Nexus will be moved under heavy escort to intake. You and I will lead the column to sub-level 3. You want me to walk myself to the basement, I noted. I want you to keep those people as calm as possible for as long as possible, he answered. If they panic early, we lose control, and people die faster. And after, I asked. After we run your rigs, after you check the resolution box, what happens to this branch? He hesitated. In best-case scenarios, he replied, the camp restabilizes. We go back to normal operations under increased watch. In worst case, the facility is lost, but the collapse does not propagate. That was not an answer, I pointed out. It is the only answer we have, he returned. Then we are already in worst case, I said. We stared at each other. Around us, staff moved, systems chirped, alarms warbled in other parts of the camp. On the wall screens, the yard stuttered again, burned version overlaying clean, then sliding away. Can I talk to my copies before we march them to the rigs? I asked. You know that is a bad idea. I know you want them walking, not fighting, I countered. They trust me more than they trust a squad with rifles. Let me earn their cooperation. Blackwood pinched the bridge of his nose. You have 10 minutes, he conceded. No promises, no details. I am already giving you more rope than protocol allows. I will try not to hang us with it. Old George was waiting at his door when I arrived, as if he had felt the alert through the walls. Resolution? He asked. Full package? Level 1, I told him. You, the kid, the others. Amita, Dr. Shelley. Me. He huffed. They added the doctor this time. That is new. That is what you focus on, I snapped. Not the part where they want me to lead you all into the basement and neutralize you. I focus on differences, he replied. Patterns do not change if you do not see the places they twitch. I stepped into the cell and let the door close. Chronology ordered targeted removal, I said. Under cover of transfer. Sub-level 3 rigs are still wired enough to do their thing. They want us strapped in and boiled for the greater good. You going to do it? He asked. No, I am not. He studied my face. Good, he murmured. Then, terrifying. You told me you tried refusing before, I reminded him. You said uprisings, fires, heaps of bodies. You said the camp still burned. So if I am not marching you politely to your death and I'm not starting a riot just to make myself feel better, what is left? He leaned back against the wall, lowering himself onto the bed like his bones hurt. In one run, he began, I made it to the rigs before the fire reached them. Resolution had already started. A few detainees were gone, a few guards. Place smelled like burnt wiring and meat. I realized they did not have to use them only one way. You mean the rigs? I pressed. You thought you could use them yourself. I thought if they could pull people out into this branch, he went on, they might be able to send one of us back the other way. Not to a collapsing branch, to an earlier point. Before the camp, before assignment. A self-extraction, I said. Turn me into one of the displaced instead of the guard. He nodded. I got as far as strapping myself in, he continued. Then the ceiling came down. Control panel went. I woke up in another run with the same assignment and a shorter temper. I never made it that far again. So you do not know if it works. I know it did not fail the one time I tried. I failed. I hesitated. I tried to stay and help everyone at once. If we do it now, I asked, what happens to this branch? He met my eyes. It dies, like the others. But maybe this time the one that starts with you on the other side remembers something. Maybe this time the script changes before you step into uniform. It was not a clean comfort. It was a possibility with teeth. And in the meantime, I said, everyone here burns. Everyone here burns if resolution runs their way, he returned. At least this way, it is not for their numbers. It is for someone else's choice. I exhaled once. Slow. My chest hurt. This is your big idea, I asked. Turn me into a refugee and let this version of the camp go. It is the only thing I have not watched you try to do halfway, he answered. You have obeyed. You have refused. You have staged soft mutinies. You have lied in reports. You have done nothing and everything. The only thing you have not done is get out of your assigned slot entirely. You want me to abandon them, I said. The kid, Amita, Gaz, Dr. Shelley, you. No, he replied. I want you to give one of us a clean shot at a different first day. You cannot save us here. You can only choose what we are lost to. My throat burned. Can we get people out? I asked. Physically, I mean. Trucks. If the camp is going down, can we at least push some bodies beyond the edge first? Maybe, he answered. Small groups. If you have someone topside who knows what is coming and is willing to break rules, you know who that is. Dr. Shelley's face flashed in my mind. Then Amita's. Both too stubborn to stay out of it. And my copies? I asked. You, the kid, the others. Do we strap you in and gamble, or do we leave you out of this one? He smirked, tired. You think there is a version where I sit out your worst idea? We are in this together, one way or another. Camp Anabasis, I muttered. Where the motto is no good options. He spread his hands. You wanted out of their script. This is what that looks like. A vibration rattled the wall. Dust fell in a thin line from a corner seam. Somewhere above, something heavy had shifted. We were running out of time. I need to talk to Dr. Shelley, I said, and Amita, and maybe Gaz. Gaz? He asked. You trust him with this? He has seen the rigs, I replied. He already thinks he is complicit. I would rather he be in the room than improvising outside it. Old George nodded. Go, he urged. Bring them. Do not overthink. The fire will not wait for you to process your feelings. I pulled the plan together in 3 short conversations that felt like making deals with different parts of myself. Dr. Shelley met me in a side office off Psych, a small room with 2 chairs and a wall of case files. She looked like she had not slept in days. Her hair had escaped its knot. Her eyes were red at the edges. You want to do what? She asked when I laid out the basics. Use the rig on me, I answered. Push me out as a displaced instead of a guard. Get as many detainees as you can onto ground transport and off the property before the camp collapses. Tell them whatever you have to. Anywhere beyond the fence is better than here when this goes. And if command sees me open the gates? She asked. They will treat me as the failure point. Terminate me in this branch, block me in others, whatever suits their math. They already flagged you for resolution, I reminded her. You are on the list. This way, you use that risk for something other than being a neat line on their form. She dropped into one of the chairs, hand over her mouth. You are asking me to help kill a camp, she murmured. I am asking you to help some of them outrun the blaze, I replied. You told me roles are never simple for Nexus cases. This is me taking mine and doing something other than carrying a key. She lowered her hand. If I do this, I need you to promise me one thing. Name it. Wherever you end up, whoever you end up as, if you ever smell smoke and hear someone use the word resolution in the same room, you turn around and leave. That is the plan, I answered. She barked a short laugh that broke halfway. I will start moving people, she decided. Kids first, anyone with medical flags. I will tell command I'm reducing density in high-risk blocks in case of structure failure. It is technically true. Technically true is my new favorite category, I said. Next was Amita. I caught her near the Block B common area, her paper map tucked under her arm. The camp lights shaded her face in uneven bands. "You picked a good time to come clean," she commented when I told her about resolution. "Our walls are melting, and your bosses want to pretend they still know which side is inside." "I need a favor," I told her. "You always need favors. You just started admitting it recently." I explained the trucks, the rigs, the fact that I was planning to let this branch die. "You sure you are not doing this to absolve yourself? A grand gesture instead of staying to open doors during the fire?" "It is both," I answered. "I am not noble enough for it to be just one thing." Her eyes softened a fraction. "I appreciate the honesty," she said. "You want me to help get people on those trucks. You know what that means?" "They will listen to you," I replied, "more than to a guard yelling at them to move." "It also means I choose who gets a seat," she pressed. "Who gets left behind? That choice sticks, even if the branch does not." She studied my face for a long second. "I will do it," she agreed, "on one condition." "Everyone has conditions today," I muttered. "All right. What is yours?" "You include my name on one of those resolution rigs. If you get out, if any version of you ever ends up in a world where these camps are still running, you remember the ones who stood on the inside of the fence trying to make them bearable." "Your name is already on the list," I told her. "Chronology flagged you." "Then good. No paperwork required." Last was Gaz. He cornered me in the armory as I checked my baton charge and grabbed extra restraints. "You really going to walk them down there?" he asked. "After what we saw?" "No, I'm going to walk them toward there. What happens when we arrive is different." He narrowed his eyes. "You are planning something stupid." "Very," I agreed. "And you did not think to tell me." "I am telling you now." I laid it out in 3 sentences. Extraction rig, self-transfer, sacrificial branch, trucks. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned his shoulder against the rack of rifles. "You really think you can jump branches? And land somewhere you can do more good than here?" "I think staying and obeying burns us for sure. Refusing and fighting burns us anyway. This at least offers something different on the other side." He stared at the floor. "You know, when I signed on here, I thought the worst thing I would have to do is crowd control and maybe shoot a few rioters in the leg. Now you are asking me to help you blow a hole in reality." "You can walk away," I told him. "Play it straight. Help with the transfer as ordered. You will probably survive longer than I do. If I walk away, I will just lie awake for however many hours this place has left, wondering if you needed one more pair of hands." We looked at each other. "You are an idiot," he concluded, "but you are my idiot." "That a yes?" He sighed. "I will help get them to sub-level 3, he agreed. "After that, we improvise. But if you turn into ash in some rig downstairs and this camp still burns, I am haunting whatever version of you makes it out." "That is fair." Transfers began under a sky that could not decide which camp it belonged to. We moved Moreno-class detainees and the other flagged names in small groups, under heavy escort, toward intake. The loudspeakers repeated the cover story. Temporary relocation to reinforced quarters pending structural assessment. Most detainees did what they always did when guards and loudspeakers spoke in that tone. They went where they were told and tried to make their faces blank enough to pass. Kid George walked between me and Gaz, jumpsuit grey, wrists cuffed loosely. "Game over?" he asked under his breath. "Not yet," I answered. "But the timer is loud." "You got that look," he muttered. "The one you had in my branch right before you rioted. You remember that?" "I remember flashes. You on a table, yelling. Me with a broken arm. Fire. You died in that one. I made it to the fence and then the sky went away." "Well, let us try something different this time." In the intake holding area, we gathered the targets. Old George, Kid George. 2 other versions with my face, one wearing a medic's posture, one with a missing hand. Amita stood among them, chin high. Dr. Shelley hovered near the door, tablet clutched, doing a passable impression of someone only there to monitor mental state. Guards lined the walls, rifles at ready, but barrels pointed down. Most of them looked tense, not eager. No one joins a humanitarian camp to run a cull. Blackwood strode in, his presence snapping a line through the room. "Listen up," he called. "Structural instability has compromised parts of this facility. For your safety, we are relocating select individuals to a hardened sub-level. You will be escorted by security. You will not resist. You will comply with instructions. Do that, and we will get through this with minimal casualties." His words were technically true. They just left out the part where the hardened sub-level was lined with rigs that cooked you for the timeline's benefit. Old George watched him with a weary knowing. The others watched me. "Is this about the ceiling?" Amita asked. Her tone carried enough volume to travel. "This is about fire safety," Blackwood replied. I caught Dr. Shelley's eye. She gave a small nod. She was already in motion, pulling strings topside. Trucks would be loading under the excuse of temporary dispersal. She would work faster now that she had seen Blackwood's face close up when he said, "Minimal casualties." "Column up," I called, 2 by 2. We formed the line, guards flanked, detainees in the middle. I took point with Blackwood at my side. "Last chance to back out," I murmured. "For you or for me?" he asked. "Either." He did not answer. We marched. The camp shifted as we moved. Walls that had been clean when we passed 20 minutes earlier now showed streaks of soot in parallel, like someone had thrown paint in future tense. Floor tiles cracked underfoot where they had been whole. In one corridor, a section of ceiling simply was not there for a stretch of 5 meters. Through the gap, I could see sky, bright, wrong, before the panels wove themselves back. "Eyes front," I called. The stairwell to the lower levels felt like the throat of the facility. We descended one flight, then another. At sub-level 2, Blackwood held up a hand. "Non-essential guards stay," he ordered. "Only those needed for the transfer go on. We minimize exposure." 3 guards peeled off. Gaz stayed with me. We reached the warped door to sub-level 3. It looked worse than when I had last opened it. The sealant around the frame had cracked in fresh lines. A dull vibration travelled through the metal, like something behind it was pressing. Blackwood used his keycard and emergency chip together. The lock gave reluctantly. The door opened inward on the charred corridor and rigs beyond. The smell hit this time. Not just the old, baked-in tang of burned material, but a fresh edge under it. Hot and metallic and sweet in a way my body recognized without wanting to name. Whatever the rigs did, they had done it recently. Kid George gagged. One of the other versions turned his face away. Dr. Shelley whispered, "They started early." Blackwood squared his shoulders. "Inside," he ordered. "Now." We moved them into the rig room. 2 frames were still clamped around bodies, or what was left of them. One looked like a guard in partial uniform, chest burned out where the restraints had pressed. The other was harder to pass, more mass than form, as if the process had tried to pull them in 2 directions at once and given up. "Do not look," I murmured to the kid. "Too late," he rasped. Old George took it in with a single sweep. "New decor," he observed. "Nice to know they have been keeping busy." Blackwood's face was grey. "Use the thermal gauntlets," he instructed Gaz. "Disconnect those. We need the rigs clear." "You already used them," I pointed out. "You got a head start on your resolution count. Maybe we can call it a day." "You know we cannot," he replied. "The system has a target. It will keep pushing until we hit it or overshoot. Overshoot is worse." "That is convenient," I said. "Numbers that always demand a full load." He moved closer, voice low. "Do not do this here, George. Not in front of them." "Do what?" I asked. "Have a conscience." "We are out of time," he snapped. "We do this clean. We keep it contained. We hesitate, the camp folds, and all those people topside you pretend to care about die screaming anyway." He meant it. That was the worst part. He believed this was the least bad path. I glanced toward the rigs. Old George's gaze met mine. He gave a small, sharp nod. Choice time. I took a breath that felt like swallowing glass. "Change of plan," I announced. The room froze. "Officer," Blackwood warned. I stepped up onto the low platform beside the nearest empty frame, putting myself a little higher than the group. It was not much of a stage, but it made my voice carry. "Chronology wants you fed into these," I told the detainees, blunt. "They are calling it transfer. It is not. It is execution with extra steps." A murmur rolled through them. Dr. Shelley pressed her hand over her mouth. Blackwood whipped toward me. "George," he snapped. "Stand down." "No," I said. "For once, no." I pointed at the rigs. "I'm going in one of these. Not to burn here, but to jump. To push myself out of this run into another. Maybe before this camp. Maybe sideways. We do not have the manual, but it is a shot." "That is not how they are designed," Blackwood barked. "You mean that is not how you use them?" I countered. "Does not mean they cannot." I looked at the detainees. "Dr. Shelley is upstairs moving people out," I told them. "Trucks, as many as she can. Amita is helping load. Some of you will get out before the collapse hits full, not all. I cannot promise numbers. I can only promise that dying here is not your only contribution to their math." Old George stepped up beside my platform. "He is stubborn enough to make this work," he called. "I watched other versions of him die in corridors and on towers and under doors. At least this time, he is picking where he falls." "Shut him up," Blackwood ordered. 2 guards lifted their rifles a fraction. Gaz moved before they could. He stepped between them and me, hands up, not touching the weapons but close enough. "You shoot him now," he told Blackwood. "You own all of this fallout alone. Chronology will put your name under branch event final and scrub your conscience in the next loop. He is giving you a way to split the load." "You are out of line, Sergeant," Blackwood growled. "Absolutely," Gaz agreed. "Never claimed otherwise." Another tremor shook the room. Dust fell from the damaged ceiling. A crack widened along one corner. Somewhere down the hall, metal clanged as something big shifted. "We are done talking," Old George announced. "We do this or we die arguing." He grabbed my arm and hauled me toward the nearest empty rig. "You really trust this?" I hissed. "Trust," he snorted. "No. But I trust that staying in this branch and obeying him ends the same way it ended for me. Give one of us a different starting line." We reached the rig. It looked worse up close. The clamps along the rails were warped in places. Black residue marked where skin had fused to metal before. "Get on," Old George urged, "before the roof makes the choice for you." Hands helped me. Gaz on one side, Dr. Shelley on the other. I had not seen her move closer, but there she was, fingers quick on the straps. "You got down here fast," I muttered. "I rerouted 2 trucks and jumped a stairwell," she replied. "If I'm going to be resolved, I'm damn well choosing the company." "You are not getting resolved." "That is not your call," she returned. They strapped me in. Metal against wrists, ankles, across my chest. The clamps did not feel hot yet. Old George moved to the control panel. "Amita," I called. "You still want your name on something?" She stepped into my sightline. "You better believe it." "There is a data port," I told her. "Take my terminal. Record whatever you can. Leave it where somebody might find it if this works. A note in a bottle." She took the device. Her fingers brushed mine, quick and firm. "You are giving another you homework." "It is the only way I know how to be annoying across realities." Blackwood moved closer. His hand hovered near his pistol. "You will kill us all." "Chronology already did the math," I replied. "They decided this camp is expendable. I am just choosing what we get spent on." "You think throwing yourself into a broken machine will fix that?" he pressed. "No. I think it might crack it somewhere they are not looking." We stared at each other. The room trembled again. A section of ceiling gave with a groan, dropping a chunk of plaster and metal near the far wall. People ducked. The rigs vibrated under me. Lights along their sides came alive, one by one. "Power rerouted," old George called. "I can juice one of these fully, maybe two. After that, we are in the dark." "Take him first," Dr. Shelley urged. "Then anyone else who wants to risk it." "I am staying," Amita cut in. "So am I," Gaz added. "The kid?" Kid George shook his head. "I think my part is here," he answered. "Someone should be yelling at people in the corridor when the beams fall." The control panel emitted a high, rising tone. Not musical, more like metal being stretched. Old George's fingers hovered over a final switch. "You ready?" he asked. "No. Do it anyway." He toggled the switch. The world narrowed. Heat punched through the rig, up through metal into my bones. Not burning skin, not yet, but a deep, radiating heat, like standing too close to a furnace. The room stuttered like the yard had. For a moment I saw it in the fully burned version old George had described. Walls black, rigs twisted further, bodies charred and fused to metal, flames licking along exposed cabling. Then back. Then burn again. Pain followed, fast. It felt like every joint was being pulled in two directions. Not physically stretched, exactly. More like someone had grabbed the idea of my arm in one place and the reality of it in another and was trying to overlay them. I screamed. I do not remember deciding to. The sound tore out of me, voices blurred, Gaz swearing, Dr. Shelley saying my name, old George muttering numbers under his breath as he adjusted controls. Through the haze, one voice cut in clean. "Stop," Blackwood barked. "Shut it down." I forced my head to turn. He stood with his pistol drawn, aiming straight at my chest. His face was twisted, not with anger, but something close to grief. "Do it," I rasped. "You want control. This is your shot." "You are ripping the node," he snapped. "If you tear it wrong, it will take adjacent branches with it. You are gambling with more than yourself." Welcome to my last few days. My ribs felt like they were buzzing, every breath scraped. He took a step closer. The gun did not waver. Behind him, the corridor beyond the rig room warped. For a moment, there were two halls, one clean, one choked with smoke and bodies. Guards in one, different uniforms in the other. I saw myself among them in flashes, in different gear, different ages. Old George shouted something over the rising tone. I could not pass the words. Blackwood's gaze flicked between my face and the rigs. His knuckles whitened on the grip. If he shot me, maybe the process would stop. Maybe chronology would chalk it up as a failed run and pull the plug. Maybe the next version would be smoother, more obedient. Or maybe he would just add my corpse to the pile and the machine would keep chewing. "Colonel!" Dr. Shelley called. Her voice cut through the noise like a scalpel. "You know how this ends if you do what they want. You watched it, more than once." His eyes closed for a fraction of a second, just long enough for me to see the weight behind his lids. When he opened them, they were wet. His gun lowered. "Finish it," he ground out. "If this works and you land somewhere, George, you owe me one thing." Pain spiked. "What?" "Remember that a man like me can choose different once, even if they erase it." "I will," I gasped. The rig scream hit a peak. For a moment I felt everything at once, the mess hall ceiling coming down. The boy with the red stripe on his arm. Amita shouting people onto trucks. Gaz hauling someone from under a beam. Dr. Shelley's hand on a gate override. Old George braced over the controls, teeth bared. Blackwood standing between us and the door, gun now aimed at someone behind him, covering our backs. Then the room tore. The floor under the rig cracked. The frame bucked. A beam dropped somewhere to my right, crushing something heavy with a hollow crunch. Heat roared across my skin. The clamps bit. Everything inside me jolted sideways. My last clear thought in that room was stupid and small. I hoped the boy from Lima 7 was already on a truck. Then I went. Landing hurt in an entirely different way. I woke up on my back in a narrow bed, staring at a crack in a ceiling I did not recognize. For a second I thought I had failed, that I was still in sub-level 3 between overlays. Then I noticed the details. The ceiling was stained in one corner from a leak that had been patched badly. The air carried the distant, muffled thump of traffic. Somewhere below, someone was playing music at a volume too low to make out the song. My hand reached automatically for a baton at my hip and found only thin fabric. I turned my head. I lay in a small apartment, single room, kitchenette in one corner, table with 2 chairs, used mug on the surface. My cheap watch sat on the table next to a hand terminal. Both looked new, unscratched. My body felt intact. No burns, no restraints, a soreness in every muscle like I had been on my feet for days, but no specific wound. I sat up slowly, half expecting the movement to tear something. Nothing tore. On the table, the hand terminal flashed a notification. New assignment, United Earth Authority, security posting. I picked it up. The assignment details unfolded. Transfer from City Corrections to a low-risk temporal displacement facility, designated Camp Anabasis. Start date 1 month from now. Relocation package. Briefings attached. At the bottom of the list of files, a small line blinked in red. Contaminated data access restricted. My thumb hovered over it. Chronology would call this a glitch, a corrupted file. Something the filters had flagged but not scrubbed. The part of me that had lived under their rules for years wanted to report it and let some tech erase it. The part that had just burned in a rig in a collapsing branch pressed open. The file was short. A simple text note. It began, "If you are reading this, they have not caught it yet." My own voice in phrasing. "You do not remember the camp yet," the note went on. "You only know the recruitment spiel, humanitarian work. Safer than city corrections, good benefits. You are half convinced it will make up for Cordova. It does not. Camp Anabasis burns in more branches than not. Chronology uses it as a pressure valve. They will tell you are a nexus. They will use that word like hero. What they mean is component. At some point you will be ordered to help kill people who trust you. They will call it resolution. They will tell you billions depend on it. They will not be lying about the numbers, but they will be lying about your lack of options. Do not take the order." I closed my eyes for a second, opened them. "If you still take the assignment," the note continued, "watch for these things. Scorch marks on a corridor they call a construction error. A mess hall ceiling that does not match its own supports. A hidden door off the laundry. A man with your face in a detainee jumpsuit who calls himself old. Listen to him but do not worship him. He went wrong too." I could feel my pulse in my fingers. "You cannot save everyone," the note went on. "That is not what this is. You can choose who you spend and what you spend them on. You can let Command spend you on keeping their model tidy, or you can spend yourself on breaking their script. One day, you will stand in a room and decide whether to help light a match. If you can avoid the camp entirely, do it. Tear up the assignment. Take the transfer to some frozen border post and complain about boredom for the rest of your life. If you cannot avoid it, if they push, if they threaten, if you end up there anyway, remember this. We were not made to be the ones who light the match." The file ended there, no signature. My hand shook around the terminal. Outside the window, a siren wailed briefly in the street, then faded. Ordinary city noise. Somewhere above, a neighbor laughed at something on a screen. I stood and crossed to the window. The glass showed a slice of the street below. People moving, vehicles, a food stall at the corner, a kid on a scooter. Life. No walls, no watchtowers. In the reflection, my own face looked back. Younger than old George, less lined. Scar along the jaw from Cordova, still rawer. The skin where his burn would be was whole. For a heartbeat, the reflection shifted. Not dramatically. Not in some horror movie glitch. Just a layering. My face with his burns, his grey hair, the tired set to his mouth. Then the younger version again. I pressed my palm to the glass. At my wrist, the cheap watch dug into my skin. Same model, same band. I turned it, feeling the familiar bite. On the table behind me, the assignment form waited. Accept. Decline. 2 buttons that would send my life down different lines. Chronology would have a preference. Their models would tell them which choice produced smooth numbers. Somewhere, a version of me had already clicked accept enough times to burn dozens of camps. This time, a version of me had sent a note back. Smoke from a neighbor's cooking drifted in from the half-open window. For a second, it mingled in my mind with the remembered heat of the rig room. One ordinary smell and one tied to char. I closed the window to keep the ordinary inside and the memory out. Then I turned back to the table, sat down and set the terminal between my hands. I did not know yet which button I would press. That was the honest truth. Muscle memory leaned one way. The warning leaned another. But for the first time, I was not just the guard hired to walk people through someone else's disaster. I was a man with my own handwriting in his inbox, telling him the camp burns and that the match does not have to be in his hand. Whatever choice I made next, it would not be blind. The glass behind me held my double reflection, unscarred and burned, until the light shifted and the room claimed it back.